Hey everybody, it's Eric Pappenfuss. It's Friday, so it must be a buy day, and today we have a very special mystery edition of Buy Day Friday because I need your help to let me know whether or not the two books I'm about to show you were owned by very famous people. Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below this video. Let's get right to it. The first book we have is a beautiful book in what's called a Cambridge binding. That's this style of binding which is two-toned with a sort of rectangular series of impressions made by the binder. It was very common in England and Cambridge, and that's what we have here in the early 18th century. This is a book from 1713 on the method for attaining the knowledge and practice of arithmetic. Now, what's interesting about this book is that it may have been owned by a very famous individual, William Ellery. And if you look at the title page, it says William Ellery, 1767. Now, if it is the William Ellery, which we're trying to prove, he was a signer of both the Declaration of Independence and the Articles of Confederation from Rhode Island. Is a very famous individual, and anyone who signed the Declaration of Independence is a very, very collectible person. Now, I know the first thing you're saying is, well, wait a minute, it was published in London. How can you possibly tie it to America and to William Ellery in Rhode Island? And if you look at the title page, it was owned at one point by somebody named a John Drummond. Well, there's one more clue in this book, which is important, and that is in the back of the book. And in the back of the book, in someone else's hand, there's an inscription which says, William Ellery's, formerly belonging to John Drummond of Boston. So suddenly we have a connection to colonial America, which is in the back of the book. And if you look up John Drummond, which is an even more common name than William Ellery, there seems to be a number of John Drummonds or Drummonds who went to Harvard, and William Ellery also went to Harvard. So is it possible that it's a Harvard connection, a book that William Ellery picked up before the Revolution? Yes, I think it is. This could have been in Drummond's hand, and this could be in Ellery's hand himself. Now, the problem is the signature here looks nothing like William Ellery's signature on the Declaration of Independence. And in fact, on the Declaration of Independence, his signature is the second largest after John Hancock. So there is a question as to whether or not when you're performing a signature, maybe that's a little bit different than when you're signing your name in one of your books. The last clue that we have is the topic of the book, and this is a math book. It's not only about arithmetic, but it's about accounting practices, and this is exactly the type of book that somebody who worked in maybe a customs office would have had. And what Ellery was doing at this time in the 1760s and 1770s was he was working in a customs office in Newport, Rhode Island. So could this have been a working book which he used prior to the American Revolutionary period? I think the content works very well. Well, those are the clues that we have. Let me know. Do you think it was the William Ellery or maybe a different William Ellery? And is the handwriting able to be proven or not? Now, the second book is a more modern book, but I have to say it's a similar dilemma. I've got it in this nice box here. This is a book by William Morris, the great arts and crafts designer of England. And it was published in America, in Chicago, in 1917 by the firm of Charles Kerr. Now, Charles Kerr was a socialist printing company in Chicago, and Morris was quite famous for being a socialist. And this is a very interesting novel because it's about a futuristic vision. It's sort of sci-fi. A guy wakes up in a dream, and it talks a little bit about the utopian socialist society. Again, it was published in Chicago, and the question is, somebody else was living in Chicago at that time, and that was the architect Frank Lloyd Wright. And could it be that this book was, in fact, owned by Frank Lloyd Wright? Now, we've got a couple problems right away with this signature. The common signature of Frank Lloyd Wright has those long horizontal lines that are very evocative of the sort of architecture which he did. It looks nothing like his signature. It also says that it was signed in Fresno, California. We don't have a lot to go on, but I can tell you that Frank Lloyd Wright was in California in 1917, which is the year that this book was published, because that's the year that he took a boat to Japan. You couldn't fly to Japan at those times, and stayed there for the next 3 years designing a number of influential projects in Japan. He also was well known to have designed a number of works in the Fresno area. In fact, I was just Googling, and if you want, you can go experience Frank Lloyd Wright as part of the Fresno Art Museum art tour. You can get wine, cheese, and go look at his houses. So Frank Lloyd Wright certainly knew Fresno, California. But the main issue is we don't have a match on the signature. But could this have been the type of light reading? By the way, there's also an FLW on the top of the book, which he maybe read on the boat ride over to Japan. And could his signature in a personal book be something that's very different from his signature on a formal document? The fact of the matter is that if this is the Frank Lloyd Wright, this is probably the preeminent 20th century designer owning a work by the preeminent 19th century designer. It's a very desirable thing, and the book goes from being worth, say, $20 as a book to maybe $2,000. So that's why it's important. Ellery's a similar thing. That book's a $100 book, or it's maybe a $1,500 book if it's really owned by the signer of the Declaration of Independence. So let me know your thoughts. Obviously, there's more research that can be done, but I'd like to know whether you think we've got a case or we should just give up. It's pretty fun. Both of those came from booksellers. One came from a bookseller in New Jersey very recently, and neither had done anything with the previous ownership. All right, we're going to end on a funny book. Are you ready? One of my favorites, been here for a while. It's Practical Horse Massage. Now, listen, I like massage as much as the next guy, and I would never begrudge a massage for a horse. However, the question is whether or not horse massage is particularly practical. And I have to say, we have picture after picture of folks doing rather incredible things, including standing on blocks of woods and stools and reaching over horses and dressing. But the most important thing is that there's a disclaimer at the beginning of this book. And I just want to read you the disclaimer because it does call into question the whole topic of the book. And the disclaimer starts, if your horse pins his ears, picks up a back leg, or otherwise seems like he may want to flatten you, stop what you're doing immediately and reassess. Well, maybe not for everyone, but for certainly some people. Practical Horse Massage. All right, looking forward to your comments, and we'll see you next week on Buy Day Friday.